Let's get started. Should we go just round table, latest developments?
Sure.
Yeah. I've started working a month and a half ago for Discourse Graphs. I think I've mentioned that before.
Oh, I missed. I wasn't here for that. That's cool.
Yes, it is cool. So trying to do a lot of things that need doing with and trying to introduce some of my ideas in there when where appropriate. And sometimes we're still determining if it's appropriate. I do need to have a second version of my work on frames published someday, but right now I'm preparing an article on there's a conference on AI and democracy, which is a bit peripheral to the theoretical technical thing we're discussing, but I think it's still germane to our mutual interests. And it turns out it's the IJCI conference. And it turns out it will be held in Montreal in August. So it would be
Which
silly for me.
means you can attend, which is super
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, exactly. So looking forward to see if I get that written. I've done a little conference on AI, more generic, as part of my incubator. I should publish the transcript because I did it in French, but I did translate the transcript and check the translation. So I should publish that soon so people know what I'm saying about AI. I'm being extremely critical, of course, but still, there's good things. A few. Um, what else is new on my side? That's most of what I'm doing these days. So it's a bit of a short answer, but that's my part of the round table. What about others?
I can go. I'm still working on Ameliorate. I kind of, well, recently I had some focus on trying to market a little bit and then just like kind of chugging random features. Um, I did find some interest in the like legislation realm. There's like a nonprofit that makes a mobile app for allowing people to vote on current legislation and like compare uh, like representatives' votes to constituents,
Okay,
and they're interested in like potentially using Ameliorate for bills, like as a solution to some set of problems.
nice.
And but like I need to figure out a good way to make Ameliorate more usable, specifically on mobile, because I think it's like they mainly have a mobile app for people to look through bills, and I don't think, yeah, I mean, Ameliorate's not super great for mobile right now. I think just like the diagramming, like if you get used to the diagramming features, then it's like it's okay. But like for someone just coming into it, it's definitely hard to use all those diagramming aspects of it. So I'm thinking through various ways to kind of make potentially another view that like is just an alternative to the diagram that's maybe like simpler um, for like focusing on certain aspects, I guess, without so much the relational pieces. But yeah, I don't know. Ideally, it would I'd just be able to keep the diagram and it'd be good enough, but it's tough, I guess, to do on mobile with
Oh Lord, don't tell
yeah.
me. That's a big problem, isn't it? Everybody wants this. I mean, we want this super high end. Let's show how everything relates. And then, oh, but can you put it on mobile? It's like, no. But
Yeah.
but it's of course it has to be on
Go
mobile.
on a tablet, but it's certainly not going to go on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there, there are things that can be done on an iPhone, but not showing the whole complexity of relations.
Yeah, I think what I'm right now, I've got like a couple different prototypes, but I don't think any of them are super great. I think the best bet right now is like, okay, something without the diagram as like a initial view, but like when you click on any piece, it can just open up in the diagram like that thing and its neighbors. So it's like,
Right.
and you can just kind of
When you're in a mobile, it's the paradigm is you go from this thing to the next thing, and every view is centered on one node. And at best, you have like you could go from node view, neighborhood view, next node view, neighborhood view, next node. So and each of these would be a card. So at one point you're showing the node content, at one point you're showing the node neighborhood, then the node
mm,
content, then the node neighborhood. But each screen has to be very focused.
yeah, yeah. I guess I was envisioning more of like, well, you might jump from like node neighborhood to a different node's neighborhood directly, and then like you could like press a different button to see the details of like that
That's
node or
fine too.
something.
That's fine too. That's fine too. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
one neighborhood at a time and or one node at a time, not even both. It's
Right, right. Yeah, just
but yeah, I
can't
agree
fit
that
it very much.
but the point is there has to be an easy way to go from node to neighborhood to node, and there has to be an easy way to go from node to neighborhood to neighborhood. Uh,
Right, right.
and if it's just click, uh, maybe long click for node info, that would work because let's face it, you may want to navigate neighborhoods faster than you want. What you could
Yeah.
have is a little uh, mini node info when you click on a node, and then you'd have recenter on that or full node info. Two
You mean like
buttons.
when you tap a node that there's like a little pop-up of some
At
details
below,
or
you'd have an always on region at the bottom. Like this is
oh, I see.
the current node, the current tap node. So it's we'd
Hmm.
start with the center and we'd say you'd have title and minimal information, number of neighbors, but really minimal. Then you tap another node, that changes. And then you have two buttons. One is recenter and one is dig into the info.
A little bit
Hmm.
like Google Maps on a cell phone.
Like
Yeah,
where you can like where when you tap one, it brings up on the side kind of like that location, and then
yeah,
you can like go directions from there or something like that.
yeah.
Something
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Joel, is there a link to Ameliorate? Is it online? So I can,
It's online, Ameliorate.app, and I can just share that.
well, that's
Let's
all right.
see.
I can do that.
Okay, yeah. If you scroll down on the homepage, there's some examples of uh like different diagrams, I guess. But they're still not. I still don't have an explore page, which I should have, but soon, soon.
Yeah, I've seen it before. It's evolving.
Yeah, it's improved a little bit, incrementally.
That's
No
how
major,
it
I
always is,
guess.
isn't it?
Apparently,
Yeah.
I've been to it. My browser knew about it. So yeah, no. So this
Uh,
is good, and it's at GitHub, which makes me even more excited.
yeah, yeah. It's open source. I'm the only one mainly working on it, but I have had a bunch of random first contributors that take like the really simple I make simple issues just to potentially get contributors or learning opportunities for others, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Jack,
Joel,
your high level.
I noticed, Joel, that you've got a guitar in the background.
Uh it's been too long since I've played.
Well, I
I
know the drill, but I wanted to use that as a stepping point to remind you that the way Al Einstein solved problems was to play his violin.
oh.
And it turns out that there's a science behind that, that your optive nerves, the part of your brain that deals with vision is huge. And when you get it stirred up playing a violin, um, you're using the optic nerves, the sound nerves, and the rest of your brain, and that allowed him to make connections. And the way it works, there's a science behind that, is that when you're conscious, fully conscious, you've got a lot of sensors, a lot of rules, protocols in your brain floating around that tell you don't ever connect these two, couldn't happen, blah, blah, blah. But when you shut that off by distracting your conscious mind, your subconscious can take over. So you distract it with music,
Mm.
piano playing or a violin or a whatever. And that allows all kinds of parts of your brains to start working together. And the big one is this happens to you when you're taking a shower. Uh,
I
or
was gonna say that is like
you're in a
uh,
shower and you say, "Ah, shit, why didn't I think of that?" And you desperately you want to have a notepad in the shower, you know what I mean? Uh,
yeah.
and I think the worst place it happens, and Marc Antoine may not appreciate this because he doesn't drive, but you get out on a long country road and your mind just wanders. And you'll get home from work on the freeway and ask, "How the hell did I get here?" Because your mind was off doing other things, but
Hmm.
the rest of your brain was still in control. You used the right off ramp of the freeway, you stopped at the stoplight, you did all the things right, but your mind wasn't on it. Very dangerous, but it happens. Um, so at any rate, the my update is this. I just got off of a call with Pete Kaminsky and a guy named Jordan. And I think Jordan and Marc Antoine have met in OGM, but it's hard to know. But we had one of the deepest conversations about all of the modalities of fundamentally human behavior. It includes CDL. It includes all kinds of sense making, all kinds of other modalities of collaboration and collective intelligence. Um, in the context of the fact that climate change is going to make things worse, and how the core question was, in martial arts they talk about balancing on the tip of a needle, and Buddhism may have talked about something like that. I don't know, but the point is that you have all of these things around the tip of that needle pulling you away. Polarized politics, all kinds of things. But you need to stay on top of the needle. And so what do we in CDL and sense making and all of the rest of this um, need to do to get more people thinking about staying on the top of the needle and not being attracted by the poles of the attractor basins that are the left wing and the right wing and the whatever wings. Um, and I actually think that that's core to CDL. I think CDL was invented uh, to find ways to tame wicked conversations. And so we just had an incredible uh, nearly 2 hour conversation. Not all of it was recorded, but enough of it was recorded um, that I'm very hopeful that all of us working together, all of us, including Ameliorate as being a part of this ecosystem, uh, is where we need to go. Marc Antoine's work on hyper knowledge is about allowing Ameliorate to work together with SenseCraft and Polis and real-time Delphi and blah, 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 and create information artifacts that are useful for all of us to share, to federate our work. And CDL is a piece of that. Not the whole, but it's a piece.
The full agreement. I'd like to know more about this conversation, but
You see the you will get a
I'll get
link
the
to the video.
eventually, yes, and maybe I'll have time to read it someday. I've been so inactive. Like, there's a lot of great conversations happening on OGM right now about the rules versus protocols, and oh my God, I'd like to jump in. I don't even have time to read it and follow it. But I fascinating about pin of the needle. I'm less. I was wondering what you were wondering about. Yes, there's the planetary balance and boundaries, and that's not so much pin of a needle as a zone. We're so way out of the zone that it might feel like the pin of a needle to stay within the boundaries. But yeah, but you're speaking about belief basins and certainty. That's interesting because some certainty is good, and some certain we cannot, and that's really fascinating, right? The human mind cannot. I often say we cannot think without generalization, and even up to a point, a little prejudice. We need to be able to take something as a given to build on it and stop thinking about it until there's a discrepancy, and you say, "Oh, 1 second, am I so sure about that?" But you cannot go on questioning everything all the time. So there's a kind of minimum energy parsimony. What will I take as a given or good enough? What will I take as possibly good enough? I'll still build on that, see where it leads me, but I'm prepared to question it on the drop of a hat. And what I take as totally unknown, and what do I take as, and symmetry for the clearly unbelievable, presumably unbelievable, uh, and what's fascinating is how much things were taken as a given and were recast and questioned in the global discourse. Some of that is healthy, some of that isn't, I think. I'm reading a lot about dark enlightenment and Yarvin and all that. And it's like Musk saying, for example, the empathy is a virus. The notion that empathy was a virtue and not a vice was very much taken as a given in a lot of society, thanks to religion. It's part of Christianity, it's part of Buddhism, it's part of a lot of major religions. It's part of Islam. Thank you. And very few exceptions to that. Maybe Nietzsche, I'm not even sure. Um, and we know what happened with that. Uh, of course, the Nazis were the first to take it into to question it, and we know how that ended. And so nobody dared ask that question again for roughly a century, or a bit less, a bit under a century, and now it's back on the main. And this is after we've had great books about the evolutionary value of cooperation, non-zero, and all those facts are there, they're well known, and we still have to relitigate what I see as fairly established knowledge. Obviously, a lot of people don't. And yeah, I'm all for questioning, and I think it is worth questioning when sometimes, like, obviously, when you're under attack is not necessarily the time to develop empathy, like under physical murderous attack. Everything has limits, but or even yes, maybe you'll be more a better soldier if you can have empathy with your attacker and act with the proper amount of response. But on the other hand, relitigating these basics of values I find that extremely fascinating in terms of what do we want to question and how can we question without forgetting all that led us to a certain conclusion. For me, that's a big part of a global conversation. It's a global memory. Like we reached that after this experiment, this thing happened. And right now, the problem, everybody's problem is the global memory is dispersed in a lot of documents and nobody can read them all. And even if it were in a perfect information architecture, nobody could read it all anyway. So you need to know here, I'm going against established wisdom, and maybe it's right to do so. Some established wisdom is wrong. But if I'm going against established wisdom, I need to understand where it came from. I need to double down understanding where it came from so that I can answer, like not just come up with a new answer pull it out of my backside, but really contend with all the history that went into it. And that's scholarship. Who values scholarship now? And again, the burden is huge because there's so much history now. But I think it is important to realize if you're in a, as they say, blue ocean, nobody's thought about this before. Hey, go ahead, imagine stuff. But if you're going against conventional wisdom, that conventional wisdom exists for a reason. Doesn't mean it's right, but it means that, burden of proof is higher. And burden of contending with history is accumulated wisdom and knowledge is higher. So yeah, when to doubt. Sorry, it's a huge tangent, but since you started me on, and for me that's part of the CDL, right? It's a kind of encyclopedia. Every claim, what is the history of claims and counterclaims about it? What's the memory of it? I don't know if what I'm saying is at all related to the conversation you were having, but when you said point of the needle, this is what it evoked. Maybe I'm totally misreading the thing.
So I've heard it said, I'm not sure I agree with it, but I've heard it said that Hermann Hesse wrote The Magister's Ledi as a satire on the quest for truth.
Yes, highly believable.
And
he was a mystic after all.
Oh, that's interesting. This is new to me. I remember reading the entire book and thinking, wow, that's fascinating. But I didn't have the judgment that he was doing any satire in it. But maybe it's true. I don't know.
I don't think it's just a satire. I think he respects the endeavor and wants to show its limits.
Yeah.
I think it's both-sided.
Yes.
Sorry, what is this we're talking about? Is it a book or
the glass bead game?
Glass bead game.
Oh.
Magister Ludai. It's this imagining this province of scholars where people study all their life to play this game where you basically create these new arrangement of knowledge. Each idea is encoded as a glass bead, and then you play this arrangement of glass bead to create these new arrangement of knowledge. It's a kind of perfect intellectual utopia, and
really a good read. It's worth
it's a great read. It's a
a
great
long
read.
book, but it's a very entertaining book. He takes you on all kinds of adventures.
Sounds interesting.
And the main character is kind of the acknowledged master of all times of the game, and he creates this. Rises through the ranks, and it's this whole education, Bildungsroman, and he becomes the head of the school, and he has to do this kind of inaugural address, and he makes this absolutely wonderful game. Everybody's dazzled, and then he resigns. He's like, okay, nothing. I've gone as far as I could in that right, and he wants to go into the world and get more practical, and he ends up being tutor to a nobleman's young son. Uh, and at some point they swim together and he drowns very early after that. So his life is gone. It's sorry, spoiler, but it's not. And it's really interesting because it's very clear that Hess is showing there. This guy did all the intellectual play and saw the limit of that and went to look outside. And in a way, he wasn't that well adapted to reality and he couldn't cope.
Right.
On the other hand, there was a mystical aspect where he saw something bigger than the intellectual game. And even dying, well, that's part of the spiritual path up to a point.
Hmm.
So the end is a bit disorienting, but anyway.
So that may have been, that's rumored to have been a satire, or someone said that it might have been a.
I don't know.
You will find all kinds of commentaries, and I focused on the one that said he was really trying to blow off knowledge work. And
Hmm.
in a sense, you can get that if you read it through one lens. I didn't get it, but I can see where he was coming from.
I mean, for me, I've read 3, 4 Hermann Hesse. I've read Steppenwolf. I've read Narziss und Goldmund. I've read Siddhartha, and this one. Yeah, I think that's what I read. So, like, there's very much a theme, right? And the theme is a mystical one. It's not just knowledge; it's direct experience of the world as it is. Blah blah blah. It's very much Siddhartha is very much a Buddhist novel. The Buddha is a character actually. Siddhartha meets the Buddha and decides, I don't want to follow him. I want to discover this on my own, and does finally. And again, dies at the moment he discovers it, or discovers it at the moment he dies, no matter how you want to play it. So this link is there, and same thing with Narcissus and Goldmund. Uh, Narcissus is this scholar in Abbey in Middle Ages, and he has this. He finds this orphan Goldmund, who is this extremely talented orphan, and raises him in the Abbey, and he's Goldmund is developing to be this extremely talented sculptor, but he's also very much he has a lust for life, and he leaves the abbey and he goes and womanizes a lot, and basically comes back and starts doing sculpture, and he wants to create this incredible sculpture of Eve because of his experience with women, and finally dies before achieving it because it in a way it's a magnum opus. It's too big for him, and it's kind of a secret of nature that is not given for someone to reveal, that his great vision he has. Again, but he had the vision because he had acquired this knowledge through contact in the world. And Narcissus respects him as, yeah, he's a womanizer, but he was living, he had lust for life. He was in the world and he saw the value of that, and how it added to the beauty of the sculptures he did finish. So yeah, it's. And what's the fourth one? I forget one. Siddhartha, Narcissus and Goldmund, Glass Beads Game.
Steppenwolf.
Oh, Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is wonderful.
Oh, these are old books. I didn't realize
And
how
they
old they
are.
are.
My cerebral friends in high school read Steppenwolf and Siddhartha, but I was too hung up on airplanes and too busy going to the airport on weekends and doing shit like that. And so I missed out. And it wasn't until 30 years later that I finally read I read Glass Bead Game. and realized all of the stuff that I had missed that many years earlier. But there's a cognitive style I notice.
Yeah, yeah. Hesse is an intellectual. He's writing about mysticism, but he is an intellectual.
He is an
I think.
intellectual. And
I,
my cerebral high school friends, uh, I think that the tribe I hung out in high school, we were all autodidacts. We were off doing stuff that the school wasn't teaching us, learning other stuff that high school just couldn't do for you. But their cognitive style was to remember everything they read. And my cognitive style is to not remember everything I read because I can't remember it because every sentence I read causes me to think about something else. I'm growing a spider web while I'm reading, which causes me to remember the spider web but not the storyline.
Hmm.
I can get this, I can remember the narrative arc. I remembered the narrative arc of a Glass Bead Game, but I don't remember the details or the I just remember there were adventures. But I don't remember the details of the adventures.
I, I forgot a lot of details in Glass Beats game, but obviously not all. By the way, there's the critique aspect, but it was very much a dialogue with Thomas Mann, who wrote earlier the Magic Mountain. And you have, I think, one big aspect of Glass Beat game has to be read as a response to Magic Mountain, which I didn't read, so I don't have access to that.
That is interesting.
But yeah,
Hmm. Also sounds very interesting. Community
yes,
devoted exclusively to sickness.
yes.
Hmm. Oh, not too
The
much description.
sanatorium, the ancient sanatorium. Magic Mountain is supposed to be one of the greatest novels of that century, of that era.
Hmm.
Again, didn't read it. I won't speak about it. Besides, knowing that it's highly related. Like, you cannot understand fully the Glass Beats game without the Magic Mountain, which I learned much later, so I didn't read it. And one day I'll read the Magic Mountain. What to do? Anyway, I don't think that was an answer to my question about the eye of the needle. Did I misunderstand how you were describing your conversation when I made comments about certainty and uncertainty?
Well, it wasn't the eye of the needle, but just
No,
standing
not the eye, on the tip of the needle. Sorry.
on the tip of the needle. Yes. The eye of the needle is, I think, a different
Yes,
metaphor, different
yes.
conversation. But standing on the eye of a needle, I used to refer to it as knife edge. You're standing on a knife edge,
Yeah.
and you got to be very careful because you can fall either way.
Yes.
My interpretation of what Jack said was that like, well, climate change is like such this massive problem that like a lot of the other problems don't matter as much, so it's like we lose kind of sight of this huge problem that we need to be keeping aware of. Is
Well,
that kind of
so I put it this way in the video. The left is worried about pronouns, and the right is worried about um, funding the oil companies. Somewhere in the middle is where we need to be.
I think that the left is worried about pronouns is very much part of the right-wing propaganda against the left. I'm not saying there aren't
Yeah,
people worrying about pronouns,
but the
but
fact
I'm
is,
saying
it is a fact.
I'm saying it's not as central to the left preoccupations as the right make it out to be.
I agree with all of that, but it's what got the right activated and
Yes.
which activates their base. And it's very
Yep. Yep.
clear.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You go into Zoom and you'll go into a room where there's Sarah Brown, she, her, and you say, wait a minute, I know it's a girl. Why did she have to tell me she's a she and a her? Well, it's because she's fallen into that trap. Slack asked me for my pronouns. I noticed that a lot of people take it not seriously and they'll say they, them, or something like that.
That's not unserious. It's a statement.
So are you just saying that this is like uh, something that people spend focus on when there are bigger problems, or that it's like an extreme view on
Yeah,
something that is?
it's what people use as ammunition when in fact there are bigger fish to fry. That's my
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
what I'm hoping it's let me put it a little different way. It's being irrational when being rational is being irrational when being rational is needed.
But I think the irrationality is making a big deal about it.
Yeah,
The
that's the point.
and that's the right made a much bigger deal of it than the left.
That's exactly right.
The
The left gave them the ammunition they needed to uh,
they were going to pick something. Now, it is true, I will grant that the questions of gender are one of the big divisive issues. And let's face it, I mean, gender politics is so much at the core of power and power abuse. It's not the only one, like race, of course, but still, gender is the other one. And what people feel threatened by pronouns because it's threat to traditional forms of power. Yeah, people react to that. But it's the right would have found something else to panic about,
well,
in my
it, the left is full of things that the right can play with. Um,
exactly.
but they do it to mask the underlying thesis that they live on, which is we've got to lower the taxes for the wealthy people and cut the services to the peasants.
The it's the whole great man theory of politics, right? We're looking for a savior. We're looking for somebody who will solve all our problems, who will be this genius, who will be this. And oh my goodness, I thought another thing I thought we should be beyond. But no, a lot of people have this very simplistic view of how politics work. The and the world is very complex, and simplism is always there. And where I agree with you is people helping people detach from naive, simplistic view is the big question. And showing them a bigger map is part of that. But is it enough? Like the people can just choose to not look in the map, like they choose to not see any news besides Fox News or see any news besides or MSNBC for that matter. I mean, there's a if you're not hearing what the other side is saying, you're also missing something,
That's
uh,
the point. I agree
true
with
or false. But it's also true that if you the point I was trying to make about Neil Point is obviously you cannot doubt everything all the time at once. You have to choose to strategically allocate your doubt for one issue at a time. And it's not enough because a lot of things can be doubted, but your brain can only doubt one or maybe two things at a time. And so you have to take some things on faith, because otherwise you just cannot think. You're paralyzed. And being able to be flexible about what you'll doubt, while at the same time realizing that, things got the way they were for a reason. And doubt about fundamental things requires fundamental evidence. What is it? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I don't think people have a good sense of what's an extraordinary claim. And that's just a matter of also ignorance. Like, this is one of my great fear. Like, with the net, we've seen this, right? People are more vulnerable to cookie theories when they don't have enough knowledge to realize why it doesn't fit and why it's cookie. You need this kind of culture of whatever field, basic culture of whatever field, to have a field specific bullshit detector activated. And if you've always thought, oh, I'll look it up later, then you don't have this underlying layer of understanding that allows you to detect bullshit. And this is a big problem with making knowledge so easily available. Who will bother to memorize things? And memorization is, on the one hand, ridiculous, and it's not enough because you need to analyze and you need to understand and look for patterns. On the other hand, a bit of memorization is what gives you the background to realize something's wrong here. But same thing, you cannot memorize the basics of all the fields. There's too much.
I guess that's where, if there was a canonical, debate map or something that was like the perfect, version of it that people could look up and see.
And where I do differ a bit with Tim, because I respect his ideal, his construction a lot, is I think it is important to know, this is established wisdom as opposed to this is marginal idea. That marginal doesn't mean wrong, but established means outside of that, you need extraordinary evidence. Or this is something on which nobody has a set idea. We still don't know. That's fine. But those statuses matter.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that much, but I think that makes sense. Just to be able to
Fringe
mark
versus
something.
Fringe versus established versus, and sometimes establishing what is fringe versus debated between the experts. That's fine too. That's a status. But most experts agree on that. Again, okay, that means if I want to contradict that, I'll have to work harder. Maybe the experts are wrong. It happens, but yeah, in Quebec we'd say attache ta tuque. Like, make sure your hat is well tied in, like your winter hat is well. Be prepared. Going to be a big job. So, and again, the question is, what's the shape of this, and why federation, and this and that. I mean, this is stuff we've spoken about so much. So I'm glad to be. Right now, I'm working on kind of side issues, but I am looking forward to attacking the federation aspect because that is an explicit thing I'll explicitly work on in discourse graphs community, and so it will be an opportunity to bring in the frame logic as soon as I'm done with the democracy thing. However,
it's been a while that I'm pretty sure I looked at discourse graphs, like, I don't know, at some point. But is that supposed to be like canonical, like everything is tied together somewhere,
not yet.
or
No,
okay.
right now what discourse graph does is it allows people to annotate nodes with structured discourse elements, nodes and relationships.
Okay.
It's mostly to be used by research groups, like scientific research. So how do I make sure that my hypothesis is well defined before I do my experiments? What constitutes proper evidence? A lot of it is about claims and evidence. Is this proper evidence for this claim? And their universe is scientific discourse. They are interested in communicating, like, of course, some evidence exists outside, like there's the whole nanopub universe, for example, and there's all these other communities that try to make uh, scientific discourse into little knowledge units. And so they're interested in interoperating with that. And that's one aspect where I come in. Another aspect is right now they created Discourse Graph as a Rome extension because some scientific communities use Rome, but some don't.
Mm.
So now they're doing an Obsidian extension, an Obsidian plugin.
Ooh.
And then the question will be, how do we share knowledge between a team using Rome and a team using Obsidian and blah blah blah. That's part of my mandate.
I didn't even know that Obsidian was like a shareable.
Oh,
It's
it
like
is.
based on Markdown. Um, but I guess you can have group things like group notebooks or something.
Well, if you subscribe to the Obsidian server, or you write your own Obsidian server,
Hmm.
then you can have collaborators.
Oh,
There are people who have experimented with having Obsidian do its persistence to Git repos, and then other people can subscribe to the Git repo, and now you got automatic sharing because you're all in the same repo.
right, right. Makes sense. I like Obsidian a lot. I just use it for myself though, but I enjoy it.
I'm um, I'm a big fan of any type, which is my now go-to
Yes.
uh, tool for thought. There's
Any
many.
type is really cool. I've used Obsidian for a couple of years and then jumped ship to Logseek. And then when Marc Antoine showed me any type, I've kind of do my work there. We kind of use the Matrix element client for flows and any type for stocks.
Hmm.
And it is working for us.
Hmm.
I mean, there's no perfect solution. It's just
And
it,
Element doesn't give a structured conversation. It's basically a Slack clone. And so with private rooms and all kinds of cool stuff, but it's still not what I want in the world. Um, I want a place where you can you can take every idea that you put into some space as the basis for a quest. What can we do with this? Where can we go with it? What is it linked to? Who would use it? Blah, blah, blah. We can have deep conversations and not linear chat rooms, but literally structured conversations, not unlike what you're doing in Ameliorate. Um, and and then I want to be able to hyperlink nodes in those conversations to each other or transclude them so that they become reusable objects. There's just all kinds of features I want in the world. Um, and, someday we'll get it.
okay, folks. Do we have anything else to discuss at this point?
I don't think I had anything particular. I saw you posted earlier about the great simplification video that we didn't really talk about in the Substack post.
When Jack was talking about, we had this general discussion about everything. I thought, oh, did you see this one? It's a really good. Let's tie up the main threads in a very simple way about energy, climate change. A lot of stuff is pulled together in this 4 minutes, which impressed me.
Mm.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I will. And I put a link to Ameliorate into a couple of Matrix chats I have with other people who are working with communities to do sense making. They're starting from Polis, but
Mm,
I want to expand their understanding of what's out there, and so I've put Ameliorate into I've injected it into their universes.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I actually do like monthly or every other monthly discourse sessions with which are maybe kind of similar to like a sense making session, except like specifically for Ameliorate, where I'm like building a diagram as we're talking about a thing. Um, I'm I'd be curious to compare that to like kind of what sense making sessions um you guys do.
Well, let me take a closing minute here to explain to you what my big worldview is. Um, Ameliorate is a component that would be used by an epistemic community, a knowledge working community. It's a different kind of social network than is Facebook or Twitter. Um, and I use the Disneyland metaphor. When you go in the front gates of Disneyland, if you've ever been there, you have this big statue of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse standing there waving at you. And
Mhm.
if you turn hard to the right and climb some stairs, you get on a train that takes you all the way around the park, which gives you the context of the place. But then
Mhm.
you go back to the main street and you walk down the main street, and it comes to um, the equivalent of a traffic circle. And you can leave the traffic circle to the hard right and you go into Tomorrowland. If you go straight ahead, it's Fantasyland. And if you go to the left, it's Adventureland and blah, blah, blah. There's lands. And so what is it? It's a destination resort for kids of all ages and all interests. Okay. And I think that an epistemic community should be like that. And the reason I
Mhm.
say that is because not everybody wants to go into a structured conversation, but still wants to participate. Not everybody
Mhm.
wants to go into a, a polis session and just watch people thumbs up and thumbs down their ideas. They want to go somewhere else. So there wants to be something for everybody in there. And Ameliorate is one of those somethings for everybody that belongs in an epistemic community of that kind. By the way, we call them K-hubs or knowing hubs.
Knowing ups. Mm.
And since our knowing hub that Marc Antoine and I are building is fully open source, it'll end up in schools, and that's where you really want it. You really want kids to come up to speed on critical thinking and deep learning and deep listening and other collaborative skills that they're not getting in schools anywhere.
Mhm.
And so that's where I think that's where we're going to move the needle and deal with climate change is starting with the kids. But it's not clear we have enough time to do that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I
Mm.
wanted to give you this picture of how I think about Ameliorate in the context of global sense making. It's a piece of a whole.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that sentiment idea. Yeah.
Well,
Is that
it's a big picture. Few people think in monster pictures like that, but it's a big picture.
mm,
All right, I think we could sign off, but this was fun.
yeah. Nice to talk to you guys again. It's been a while since I've been here. So
Yeah.